Hey everybody, Craig Lieberman back with another episode. Let's get into it right after this message from my sponsor. Confession, I hate cleaning my own cars. That's why I love Adams Polishes. Whatever you want to clean, polish, or shine, Adams has a specific product just for that, even for matte finishes. Since 2000, Adams Polishes has been offering premium car care products dedicated to the enthusiast. Whether you're a professional detailer or a weekend warrior, their innovative and effective products will enable you to achieve amazing results on your prized possession. Adams, made with pride and passion in the USA. Wild stunts and Fast and Furious movies are nothing new. They've been doing this since the very beginning. Today, these movies are barely movies. They've become a litany of stunt sequences tied together by a threadbare plot, if even that. Almost 100% of the time, the stunts go off safely, even if the execution was not exactly as expected, but the audiences don't pick up on that. But in Too Fast and Furious, this was not the case at least 3 times. For starters, we'll talk about the super jump, the Celine crash sequence, and the GTR jump. From the beginning of this movie, I knew that they were stretching the believability of some of these stunts. Jumping a skyline over a Supra midair at 160 miles an hour. Come on, man. But there was another stunt that was even more ridiculous than that. The script originally called for Roman to enter a tunnel while being chased. The way it was written, Roman would be sliding sideways into a tunnel. He hits the curb, flies upside down, and gets basically glued upside down on the top of the tunnel, doing 140 miles an hour, like you saw in Men in Black with that crazy stunt. Also written into that scene was the fact the Eclipse needed to be doing 140 miles upside down just to keep stuck to the underside of the tunnel. A big problem, I said right away, the Eclipse is a convertible. It doesn't work. The physics just don't work. So I pulled John Singleton aside after that meeting and suggested that perhaps we could do any number of other stunts. I suggested that, John, since we're going to be jumping over open drawbridges, why don't we do this? Helicopters are chasing him. The helicopter pilot sees that he's going to jump the bridge, so the helicopter gets in front of him, parks the helicopter right here, but Roman jumps over the helicopter and go to the other side of the drawbridge. I thought that was fantastic, and he said, I don't know, I'm not feeling okay, whatever, I'm moving on. Again, technical advice. You give advice and not much more. Okay, let's move on. Obviously, they didn't do either of those stunts, not the helicopter thing or the tunnel thing. The major stunts that were already approved included the opening street race sequence where the S2000, the Supra would all be jumping over a bridge, and to sweeten the pot, the GTR would be jumping over the Supra in midair and passing at 160 miles an hour as they're both jumping the same bridge at the same time. Okay. There's a lot of, anyway, obviously there's no way that this could be done with live humans. It's just too dangerous. So starting with the S2000, they decided to make the S2000 remote controlled. To do this, they hooked up a steering wheel from a video game, and they hook up the clutch to a pneumatic device. Everything is controlled by that thing, but nobody's driving in the S2000. That console that they created was put in a chase vehicle. It was a Dodge Durango, as you can see right here. It stays in contact with the S2000 using an RF signal. So the Dodge Durango have to stay right behind the S2000, about 75 to 100 feet range. So everything he does on the steering wheel and the gas pedal and the brake happens in the S2000, as you can see here, as it's going through the parking lot, right? So the problem was the S2000 is only manual transmission. So how do you do that? So what they did was, using pneumatics, they set it up so that there's switches on the control box in the chase vehicle that they just put the switch on, and it keeps the clutch pedal all the way to the floor. We leave it in second gear, and you rev it up in second gear, and then you pop the clutch, and it bogs, but it starts going. The second gear in an S2000 gives you about 62 miles an hour, which is all the speed we need to jump the bridge. Everything's put together, everything was tested. We used the Dodge Durango as the chase vehicle, the control vehicle, and it follows behind the S2000. Now, if you've ever seen these bridges in Florida, you can see they're made from thin slats of metal. It's not a concrete surface. So what happens is you got the Dodge Durango chasing behind the S2000. The S2000 hits the drawbridge, but the drawbridge isn't really the ramp. The drawbridge was only about this angle, just a little angle like this, and it was only about a 10-foot opening like this, and the other side was like this. So just a little bit of rake, a little incline. On top of this one, there was an actual ramp. So imagine this. Pretend this is the drawbridge, right? We built our own ramp right here. This ramp was 60 feet long and has a 3-foot drop at the end. So this is how they're gonna jump it, right? So what happened is the S2000 goes up the ramp, flies over here, and goes over and land perfectly on the other side of the drawbridge. Here comes the Dodge Durango. They're trying to stop the thing. Couldn't get to stop, couldn't go to stop. And the thing went like this. All the airbags went off. And it stopped right then and there. However, if we were using the drawbridge as the actual ramp, you know what would have happened? The Dodge Durango would have gone off the edge of the drawbridge and fall into the canal upside down with 2 people inside at night. Would not have been good. Fortunately, they worked out a situation like I just explained. That's what they did, and everybody lived. But the S2000 was pretty bashed up when it landed. That sequence was done. You never saw the S2000 again. Game over for them. Funny thing about the Dodge Durango, it was rented from, I think it was Avis, I want to say. So the front end of the Durango was completely mangled. So we took it back to our own body shop in the picture car wheels. We fixed it and gave it back to them. Turned it back into Avis about 2 weeks later. And didn't say anything about it. On the next night, we do the Supra. So as for the jumps of the Supra and the GTR, those were 2 very different events filmed on different nights. The Supra, they were gonna just do the jump straight, right? Just keep the drawbridges open like this. They didn't want height. They were just going straight over the bridge. It was a pretty easy thing. They didn't have to use the ramp. We just used the drawbridges. Standing there and watching the Supra's jump, it wasn't very spectacular in real life because I think the Supra driver was only supposed to be doing about 45 to 50 miles per hour, but the stunt driver wanted to impress Terry Leonard. Terry Leonard was the stunt director for the motion picture. Terry had a 50-year career of doing stunts himself with cowboy movies and all that kind of stuff, and he had been a stunt director on many, many movies going back almost as far as I've been alive. As a result, the stunt driver was going a bit faster, seemingly to impress the stunt director. This is why he slid the Supra way farther than he was supposed to. He went into the grass and into the base pole of the billboard. He essentially ended up going about 15 to 20 feet farther than he was supposed to do and farther than what we thought was safe. So that car was a mess after that. And cut, move out, and that car was done for the picture. That was the end of it. This is why we have multiple cars and multiple stunt cars. When it was the GTR's turn, this stunt was going to be more dangerous. And since the GTR was all-wheel drive and it has a transfer case, they didn't know what's going to happen when the car landed on the other side of the ramp. So they tried to figure out how to do this. They couldn't do it by remote control. It was too dangerous because of how far it's going to fly, how fast it's going, and all that kind of. So they had to put somebody into the car and reduce the speed. So in order to provide more safety for the driver, Eddie Paul's team installed a very elaborate roll cage. In fact, there were so many tubes in the car, the joke was that the stunt driver might beat himself to death if he hits his head too many times on those bars. Even though the stunt driver would be wearing a helmet, we were concerned about that. But if you didn't know, this stunt sequence required some serious CGI. So they took one of the GTRs and did the jump. They did it to another GTR. We lifted it up high up in the air on a soundstage and 3D scanned the underside of the car. They combined the live motion shots with the CGI footage, and despite all that hard work, it just didn't look good in that film. It looked very primitive, and most people, even people who are not motion picture experts, could realize it's kind of like 16-bit video games anyway. The next big stunt sequence was the freeway audition. You remember that? There was a red Saleen Mustang in there. It wasn't really a Saleen Mustang. In fact, it was just a V6 that we made look like a Saleen. We also had a Corvette. We had a Dodge Viper. We had the Yenko Camaro, a Challenger, Roman's Eclipse, Brian's Evo. This sequence was very carefully planned out, especially this part. The part where this Mustang gets sandwiched between 2 big rigs, and then the Saleen is supposed to wind up under one of those big rigs. So you can see here there's a steel arm attached to the roof of the Mustang. So basically there's an arm that's attached to the roof of the Mustang, and it swings like this, puts it right in front of the rear wheels, and then it just drops it right in front of the wheels, and it gets run over, okay? So no driver could be in that car because nobody could predict what would happen once the trailer ran over the front of the Saleen Mustang. But initially, they wanted a driver in the car, and they figured that if they hit it just right, he'd be okay. But thankfully, that decision decision was changed later on. And if a driver was in the car, as it turned out, and you saw what happened, he would have likely been hurt or even killed. As for the rest of the race on the freeway itself, it went off pretty easy. It wasn't very complicated, and it was mostly went on without any surprises. But there was one big surprise with the Corvette crash. The Corvette crash was always written into the script, but it wasn't supposed to roll over. In fact, in the stunt world, you don't flip a convertible with the driver in the car unless the car has a heavy roll cage, and the driver would also need to wear a helmet on, and sometimes even more gear than that. So in this case, the Corvette did not have any kind of roll cage. However, the stunt director, Terry Leonard, insisted that a pull strap was to be installed in the car. What is a pull strap? What it is basically down on the floorboard on the other side, there's a strap, a burlap strap, and you grab this thing if the car starts to go over, pull your head below the level of the dashboard, so that if the car rolls over, you don't get crushed by the weight of the car. And so when the car started to roll over, that's exactly what the stunt driver did. Reached down, pulled himself down to his face on the other seat on the right side, and when a windshield compacted, there was no injury to the driver. Thank God. And perhaps the grand finale was the launching of the Yenko. No, it wasn't a real Yenko. It was a junkyard Camaro put together by 3 or 4 other cars. First, we took one of the Camaros that we rebuilt from the junkyard. We stripped everything out that would be on a working car. So all we put inside was the dash, the steering wheel. We put on 2 front seats. We filled the front fenders with expanding insulation to help the car stay afloat. All the fluids were removed. There was no gas tank. Front bumper was attached to a hitch with a hook attached to a remote control cable. So you have the car here, the hook, it's hooked here. That cable goes around a wheel that's controlled by a winch. And when the winch starts pulling back, the car goes forward to where the wheel is. And at the end of it, it gets launched off the ramp. And that went off perfectly. It sailed up in the air. Car was 50-50 weight distribution. And it pretty much pancaked right on the water, exactly as it was supposed to do. That's the second part of it. The first part, you see Brian and Roman driving in the Camaro, cut. Then you see the Camaro fly in the air, cut. Next thing you see is the Camaro flying in the air, really attached to a cable going downhill. And right when it gets above a fake yacht, which we put in the parking lot, and they just drop it right there, and then they blow up with air effects. See all the fiberglass blowing up. So it's basically 3 different sequences. When you put them all together in quick order, it looks completely seamless. So that was perfect. So mostly everything went well. We also had one more small incident in the scramble scene at the warehouse. Remember that? A stunt driver in the Orange Julius RX-7 went out the wrong door. The car just went straight off the dock, crash. No one was hurt, but the stunt driver was sent home and did not return. As for that RX-7, it got beat up, but it didn't break in half, unbelievably. The truth, though, of course, while accidents happen, and sometimes you can't predict every outcome, it just doesn't happen. Hollywood stunt crews are top talent. No one wants to die. No one wants their friends to die. This is why everybody's paying attention. Considering how many crazy stunts have been done in these Fast and Furious movies over the last 23 years, it's a miracle that there haven't been more disasters. This is a testament to the professionalism and the expertise of the remarkable people running those stunt programs. Congratulations to them. One last thing. I get a lot of people asking me about, can they buy used stunt cars? Well, years ago, studios were very reluctant to sell these cars to the public because if the car breaks in half while somebody's family is driving down the road and it turns out it's a used stunt car, the studio will get sued for millions of dollars. Today, many stunt cars have been sold to car museums and then sold to other car museums and then now to the public. So there's surely dozens of stunt cars floating around by now. If you get one, you may want to take a look under the chassis and see what happens. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Take care.